Hey, this is Nate Wells.
And this is Drew Cove.
Check out our podcast, that Go for Hockey podcast, for the latest news and updates on University of Minnesota hockey. You can find us on iTunes, and we're also on the Zone Coverage Podcast Network.
That's elite.
The Zone Coverage Podcast Network.
They may be drinkers, Robin, but they're also human beings.
Hell yeah, let's get stinko.
Welcome, Giles and the Goalie Podcast. I am your host, capital H, Giles Farrell. Somewhere back in the Twin Cities is Ben Remington.
Hello.
Ben, I want to wish you a happy St. Patrick's Day. It is finest day of the year, the most holiest of days.
Yeah, and you are like a good little Irish boy. You are in Chicago celebrating.
Yes, I am. We watched the river get dyed green yesterday, which was, it was fun. It was cold, but fun. And then we just went out right after and celebrated the holiday, and we are going to do so again here today. So we are getting this podcast out of the way early. Otherwise, you'd have an incoherent Vegas-themed or Vegas-type podcast.
And yeah, it could be even worse than Vegas. I feel like we were somehow coherent for the Vegas podcast, even though we were fairly drunk.
Fairly is putting it lightly.
Right.
Yeah, so that's what's on the docket today. So we are going to fire right through the podcast here. Pretty quicker than normal. Going to try to, but yeah, we can get going here. Just quickly to review the week for the Minnesota Wild. It was a short week because we didn't record until Tuesday. So we have just 2 games to catch you up on. Wild lose at home to Dallas 4-1, and then they beat the New York Rangers on Saturday night 5-2. Did you have any major opinions on the Ranger game? Because I feel like the Dallas game is going to be discussed a little bit more. So,
the Rangers game looked like a game where the team got their ass chewed prior to the game. So they played really well. They really, really came out hot. They kept that pressure up through the second period. They did let off the gas a fair amount at the end, but I think by that point the game was already kind of in hand. I believe they had a 4-1 lead by that point. So, I don't know. You kind of like what you saw out of them Saturday night. But, as we'll get to, that stems from a pretty abysmal showing on Thursday. So it's really kind of hard to make heads or tails of the week on the whole.
Right, and the Wild playing later tonight, Sunday. So this, might not have a lot of shelf life, but they play the Islanders back at home. A weird back-to-back home games. They don't do that really too often to get home games on consecutive nights, but
right
here we are. So, the Dallas game was completely abysmal, and I have, not to spend a whole lot of time on that, but it was such a bad effort, and the players were correctly called out after the game, but the Wild had 4 shot attempts, not shots on goal, shot attempts in the second period against Dallas. Why? How?
Yeah.
That's not... I think the LA Kings could manage 4 shot attempts in a period. Like, it was such an awful game, and I got a second use out of my dog yawning into the camera. But also, after 2 periods, like, you looked at the shot map on Natural Stat Trick, and the Wild's shot attempts were not coming anywhere close to, the slot or in front of the net. They were all from the point.
Yeah.
With the exception of, 2. Just completely bad, uninspired hockey. And it kind of tossed away an otherwise decent performance from Devan Dubnyk. At least, with the exception of those 3 minutes in the second period. But I don't know. He wasn't the reason they lost the game. And we're going to come back to that. But the Wild at home, and this was something else that was pointed out by FSN on the telecast, which I found to be hilarious because they do not like to point out negative stats. But it was, the Wild were 4, this was before the Dallas game, or during the Dallas game, so this, I'm going to try and update it here. So the Wild now are, in their last 20 home games, 5, 11, and 4. 5, 11, and 4. Isn't this supposed to be hashtag our ice? And to further the problem, so I did one of those on Friday. I did one of those unpopular opinion Twitter things that was kind of floating around, so I did the Wild version of that. Mm-hmm. And I got a fair few amount of people telling me that goaltending isn't the Wild's problem, and I could not wholeheartedly disagree more that goaltending is their problem. And if you look at Devan Dubnyk at home since the November 13th game against Washington, that's kind of like a marking point for where his season took a turn. So in those games since at XL Energy Center, Devan Dubnyk at home is 7, 13, and 2 with a .283 goals against average and a save percentage of .894.
That's not that good.
894.
Mm-hmm.
His counterpart, Al Stalock, has a .902 save percentage at home in that time. So goaltending has very much contributed to the Wild's woes at home. Sure, there are other problems, but the Wild have always had their warts covered up by Devan Dubnyk's presence in goal. That's why when the Wild go, Devan Dubnyk goes. That's always and will always be how it works until they get, those elite goal scorers. So saying goaltending is not the problem is kind of an otherwise foolish statement. I should say it's the main problem right now.
It probably is, and it's really a kind of a neck and neck race with this team. Seems like it has so many problems. So goaltending is definitely, if it's not number one, it's up there. So it's that, and as we talked about last week, their shooting percentage is bottom in the NHL. That's cost them a lot of games as well. And even their defense, which I think is usually sound and usually one of the top units in the league, their defense has had some pretty nasty games, some pretty ugly lapses. And we kind of saw that on Thursday night against Dallas, where their defense just kind of really crapped the bed. I mean, in addition to the Wild not getting a whole lot of shots, in that same graphic that you tweeted out, the Stars were absolutely lighting up the middle of the ice. And so it's just really kind of been, a roll of the dice onto what's failing for this team. And it seems like on any given night, 2 out of the 3 facets of the game, offense, defense, and goaltending are failing. And they just can't seem to get a game where they've got all 3 working together, or at least just one of them, that's failing and is covered up by the other 2 doing well. it just seems like those nights are incredibly rare.
And I mean, you're not wrong. It's been a lot of everything that's been ailing the Wild, and that's kind of what got called out after the Dallas game. And
Yep.
And then, they turn it around on Saturday and they kind of blow out a Ranger team that's not very good. So, I mean, good on them for taking care of business, but you've now put yourself in a position where you're now 2 points behind the Coyotes for the last wild card spot. Yes, I said Coyotes. And making up points is hard, so further not taking care of business at home specifically will come back to bite you. And we saw the Wild get a win last night, and then, oh good, they can maybe jump back, get within a point, but then the Coyotes lose in overtime. So it's now 2 points clear, and that's, how hard it's going to be. And Arizona is on fire because they have a goaltender, Darcy Kemper, you may have heard of him,
What?
that's, lighting it up, and we kind of hit on that a little bit on last week's show, but they're not an easy team to beat right now. So good luck to anyone on, catching ground. So that's a big reason why, the home problems are at the forefront right now, because it's costing the Wild a playoff spot. Like, their road record is decent. It's right up there. I shouldn't say right up there, but it's, par for the course for what you would want. But their home record is, I think if I'm doing the math right, just kind of on a points percentage wise, it's like bottom 3 in the West. Like, that's not very good. Like,
Right.
You don't want to be a bottom home team in the conference. And there's just so much irony in the fact that the Wild have prided themselves on being a superior team at home, and now this is what is ultimately failing them. Hashtag our ice.
And our friend Tony from The Athletic tweeted out a stat yesterday that the Wild's PDO at home last season was tops in the league. And this season they're literally bottom. So, a lot of that I think does have to do with goaltending. I think as bad as Devin Dubnyk has been at home this year, he was that good at home last year. I think his home road splits last year were pretty ridiculous. So it's really just kind of been an absolute flip from one season to the next. And
Yeah.
I blame the Our Eyes ad campaign.
Well, the good news is it's probably going to come back for a third year because everyone just loves it. So they're
Yeah, it won awards. I don't know how that happened, but it won an award.
yeah. Well, there you go. So we talked about the Arizona Coyotes as being the team Minnesota has to catch, and taking a look at the remaining schedule here as we really get into the final games of the year. The Coyotes and Wild each have 10 games left. Arizona has 4 at home and 6 away from Glendale. And then the Wild have an even split, 5 at home, 5 on the road. The trick here is the Wild's 10 remaining games have 9 of them against teams in the playoffs right now. And Arizona has about half remaining against non-playoff teams. So
Right.
the schedule certainly favors the Coyotes here down the stretch, and if you're Wild fan or employee or whatever, like it's not looking good. Like, if we're being honest, like the playoff streak might come to an end here. I don't know. How
Yeah, it's really kind of looking that way. They're 2 points out right now, and as you mentioned, that schedule is just kind of rough. Like, I think the one non-playoff team they face the whole rest of the season is Colorado, and that's a tough game. That's not a walk in the park by any stretch. So they're really, if they make the playoffs this year, they're really going to have to earn it. Even more so than years past where they've gotten hot and kind of held on to a playoff spot by the skin of their teeth. Now they're going to have to work their way into the playoffs with a tough schedule. and that just might be too tall of a task for a team that just, quite frankly, isn't playing all that well.
After that Colorado game, the Wild really have like a murderer's row, essentially. And they play at Washington, at Carolina, at home against Nashville, at Vegas, and then at Arizona, which that game, which is the fourth to last game of the year, could be the one that decides it all. Like,
yeah, very likely.
You could win that game and you could, maybe, solidify your playoff spot, or you lose that game and you're done. Because after that, it's home Winnipeg, home Boston, and at Dallas. Also, we get a lot of reunions in that remaining schedule. Carolina, Nino Niederreiter. Nashville, the Granlund reunion tour. And then Boston, Chuck Coyle comes back.
That's right. I saw that our friend, the Big Omelet, isn't having such a hot go of it in Boston as Ryan Donato is here.
No, he has like 2 points in 10 games. It's not good for Charlie Coyle. So,
right.
If you want to proclaim the Wild have won the early returns, go right ahead. But
yeah, it seems that way, at least, which is good, because out of the several trades that they made, winning one would be nice.
Yeah, and jury's still out, but they can certainly win that trade, I think. And I don't know. I'm still a big Fiala guy. I didn't get to see him Saturday night, obviously, but I don't know. I like a lot of things I've seen from him. So kind of other thing that's really cropping up again for the Wild here is injuries. And this team really has had bad luck this year, and probably averaging out for their crappy luck their good luck last year, I should say, where I don't think they had any injuries. But like we saw Joel Eriksson go out in the last week. Jason Zucker has taken some pretty nasty spills here in a couple months.
Last night was especially brutal.
Yeah, and Luke Cunnin was out for a little bit. I mean, and this is already on top of Matt Dumba, who I don't think is returning this year, if I'm being honest. And then Mikko Koivu, who's out for the rest of the year, and the Wild cannot afford any more injuries at this juncture. I know that's something that's not controllable at all, but man, you lose any more players already, and you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot in a playoff race that you need to not have any more bad things go in favor of the team you're chasing.
Yeah, definitely. It's, thank God Cunnin came back. Hopefully Eriksson, it doesn't sound like he's too far away from coming back. But, I mean, really a huge bullet was dodged with Zucker Saturday night. I mean, that injury, he had Brady Shea just basically fall on his shin, while his leg was still upright. And that knee went in a direction that knees don't go. And so the Wild are extremely fortunate that wasn't a worse injury, because, losing Zucker for this season would be bad enough, but you're already on your way to missing the playoffs anyway. But that's the kind of, if that was an ACL, you're looking at losing him into the season next year, kind of like what we're looking at for Koivu, where he might just make it back in time, and his injury was over a month ago now.
Right, and I think maybe even more point, if you lose Zucker to a significant injury like that, then you really can't trade him.
Does this advocate injuring Zucker? Or?
No, it doesn't. I'm just saying, if he takes a serious injury like that, then good luck trying to trade him again, because you're probably not getting back, even a Michael Frolik player.
Oh God.
But I don't know. It's just been kind of an awful year for injuries, and I think a key the key one obviously was Dumba because he really was a big proponent of their offense, both 5-on-5 and the power play. And, he was back skating this last week, which, the team Twitter account tweeted out some photos of him hitting the ice. But, there's still no timetable on his return. At least that's what Bruce Boudreau had said. And, with 10 games to go, I can't imagine that he's going to get back in there. It just, even if he does get to be like 100% with, say, 4 or 5 games left, is he going to be able to jump in and make that impact because he's been out for over 3 months? And typically when you're out for that length of time, it takes you minimum 4 or 5 games to just get back up to the pace of the game, period. And having that in the heat of a playoff race, I just don't see it. Maybe I'll be wrong, but what's the point?
I would tend to agree. I think that if he is 100% with a week left in the season, I do think they plug him back in the lineup because they're desperate. So while it might not be a good idea long term, and I agree with you there, I don't think it's a good idea long term. I think that resisting the temptation to put him in the lineup is going to be tough for this team, especially given the spot they're in. But I don't think that people should get too excited about him skating. The quote was he literally went skating out of boredom. And when you think about his injury, he ruptured his pec. He could have been out skating the next freaking day. And, that doesn't really mean anything. So it's a lot of false hope. And if he is close to returning, I'm kind of with you at this point. Pack it in, I don't know that bringing him back for a handful of games on a roster that's out of contention by that point is really going to make a whole lot of sense.
Right. And again, it is unfortunate that his season, which, he had 12 goals when he went out of the lineup, and, I think that's still considered top 10 in the league among defensemen at this point, which is sensational, but just an otherwise fine season destroyed by a lousy answering of the code twice. So take that for what it's worth. And so that's kind of my other concern here as the Wild get into their final 10 games of the year is, these injuries that just kind of crop up. And they're also kind of hamstrung by recalls from Iowa because, you get those 4 recalls after the trade deadline, and they used 3 of them that day to send down Cunnin, Greenway, and Eriksson Ek so that they could be eligible for the AHL playoffs. And what a stupid rule that is, by the way.
Sure.
If you just want to, make that paper transaction to, have guys eligible, then, why should that count against you? That seems dumb, but because essentially you have Matt Reed now who's just, hanging around in St. Paul being recalled every second day on an emergency basis. So,
yeah.
And if you actually wanted to recall somebody else, you essentially can't. So it's not a great position to be in, and there's not really anyone from Iowa that's going to come up and make an impact, but,
No.
Maybe if you hadn't acquired Anthony Boteto and killed your roster flexibility. But, hey, that's just me.
Yeah, who knows?
All right, so that's kind of all we have Wild-related, unless you have any, last Wild thoughts.
Not really, no. We kind of thought that Dubnyk was turning a corner, and he still has put in some decent games. I think Saturday night against the Rangers, he was pretty decent. And like you said, the Dallas game wasn't even as bad as it looked on paper. I thought that he played a pretty decent game there, and they just got completely outclassed up and down the ice. But, it's still, goaltending is still an issue, and it's still something that ultimately, if this team doesn't make the playoffs, mean, that's going to be number one on the list. And as far as reasons, and which really sucks because it's like, you've got both your goalies locked in for quite a while. That's just something that you just kind of have to hope that it improves organically versus improving by you going out and acquiring somebody. So that's really a tough spot for the team to be in. And I guess, we'll have all summer to see how that plays out.
What if I told you that you could have had to make a kind of address the goaltending situation in the offseason, but you were no longer able to because you re-signed your below-average backup to a 3-year deal?
Well, yeah, there's that, and it's not like your former backup isn't carrying the team that's about to beat you out in the playoffs, too. So there's a lot of things to be angsty about with Wild goaltending, and I don't know. At this point, like I said, you're just hoping that things are different next year for no reason whatsoever, unless you make the only change you can make, and that's in coaching. So it's like that's really the only shot you got right now, and I hate to be that guy yet again, but that's it. I mean, otherwise it's just rolling the dice, right?
Right. When will the blinders for Al Stalock come off? Because essentially, if the Wild missed the playoffs, rightfully so, the fingers should be pointed at, Juan Dubnyk, who had a really bad year. And so if you feel the need to say, well, the Wild need to address the goaltending position, where are they going to do that? I don't think they're going to trade Dubnyk, and you have Stalock locked in for 3 more years. So unless Al Stalock just, becomes God in the summer somehow, this is what you're going to have in goal for at least the next, 2 years. So
yeah,
take that for what it's worth.
Yeah, and I don't know. There's ways around it, and certainly, you don't get yourself into that position to begin with by signing Stalock to such a stupid extension. But worst comes to worst, Stalock doesn't have any kind of clause. You can try to dump him off on somebody, or you can send him down and just kind of eat some buried money. It's not a ton, given the size of his contract. I think it'd be like $100 or $200,000 or something like that. If I take over as GM tomorrow, that's what I do. I say, Alex, we love you. Enjoy Des Moines. I hear it's beautiful. I hear it's an underrated town in an otherwise boring state. You're going to be playing there for the next 2 seasons, and we're going to sign somebody who's a competent NHL goalie.
Jamie's sitting right next to me, by the way, and I don't know if she just heard your remark.
No.
She didn't. You got off the hook.
That's not nothing that I haven't said to her face before.
Yeah, that's true. All right. So that can do it for a kind of wild discussion, and we'll just fire over into our segments here, starting with Bruce Boudreau's Quote of the Week.
Hi, this is Bruce Boudreau. I don't see how in Toronto that they're calling it, unless it's a guy they just pulled in off the street that hasn't seen hockey before. If I were the fans, I'd be booing even more, because that, they pay good money for this. If you want it, don't just think you want it. Go out and f***ing want it.
Bruce Boudreau Quote of the Week. Basically, we didn't have many things to pick from here with just 2 games, but after the Dallas game, we just basically saw Bruce, not having answers for what was going on. So basically he just said, I don't have an answer. I wish I had an answer. I wish I was up here able to give you guys answers, talking to the members of the media, because I'm asking the same questions. So he essentially just kind of threw his hands up and said, I really don't know. And it just kind of adds a little more fuel to the fire of, is this it for Bruce in Minnesota this year? Or at the end of this year? As much as I despise thinking about it.
Sadly, yeah, I mean, it certainly isn't a good thing for his long-term prognosis. He did have one-on-one meetings with each and every player on the roster on Friday. And like I said, we saw them come out a lot better on Saturday. This team played well together. Even the power play looked good. That's how good this team played on Saturday. Even the power play looked good. So I don't know. It seemed to do the trick, but those things are always fleeting. And we'll see what happens Sunday night here against the Islanders. If they come out flat, then I don't really think that. Obviously, it wasn't the magic bullet he was looking for, but it kind of sucks because he's at the end of his rope. He doesn't know what else he can do to make this team play better. And I think the opinion of a lot of folks is that his GM isn't really making his job any easier either. With a couple of the trades that he's made, a couple of them have worked out, but a couple of them not so much. So it's really kind of a tough time for Bruce. And I'm with you 100%. If Bruce is gone, that's really, really sad, and it really sucks that it had to end this way.
All right, that can do it for our Bruce Boudreau Quote of the Week. Now on to Kirill Watch.
Kaprizov across for Gusev. Kaprizov shoots and he scores! He scores! The Russians are golden in South Korea.
Kirill Kaprizov, highlighting him, just 2 games here in the Gagarin Cup playoffs. I hope I'm saying that right again, as I referenced last week, sounds Klingon, as Tomcat, which I didn't even remember saying it, but in just the first 2 games of the series against, I think it's Dynamo in the KHL playoffs, Kaprizov just one assist for CSKA Moscow, adding to his 1 goal in this series, so adding to his 2 goals, 4 assists, and 6 total playoff games as they look to continue on here in the next week. And did you have another prospect to highlight?
I do. It's actually a dude we haven't talked about yet this season, which is exciting. 5th-round pick for the Minnesota Wild in 2018, Damien Giroux, playing for the Saginaw Spirit in the OHL, having a nice little season. He's an undersized center, but in today's NHL, I don't know that there's such thing as an undersized forward anymore. Being 5'10" and 180 pounds is kind of run-of-the-mill these days, it seems. But anyway, he's got 51 points in 66 games, 30 of those goals, so kind of a natural goal scorer. We heard a little bit about this kid when they drafted him this past summer. Again, middle rounds this year, they seem to do pretty well, and he seems to be off to a pretty decent start, and he's the captain of the team as well. So some good qualities out of that kid. So we'll see if he can ever make the squad, but so far so good.
No relation to Claude Giroux either, for those wondering.
Yeah, I don't think so. Maybe very, very distantly.
All right. So that was your Kirill Watch and your Prospect Watch for the week. Now we move over to Central Intelligence.
Central Intelligence.
Yeah, I've been scoreboard watching since opening night. So I don't know if that counts or anything, but I think hockey players are hockey players, and they want to see where they are, and they know how close everything is. They know that every game is vital.
Central Intelligence, looking at the Central Division. Basically, I don't think there's been any change here. Winnipeg still at the top, 88 points. Nashville Predators closely behind, 87 points. Jets do still have 2 games in hand. Then you have the St. Louis Blues, 81 points. Just still somehow hanging in there. I don't know how. But anyway, Dallas Stars, 79 points as we saw them take a blowtorch to the Wild on Tuesday.
Did they?
And then you have the Wild, 76 points. And the Chicago Blackhawks, 73 points. They have leaped with 5 wins in a row. They've leaped over the Colorado Avalanche, 72 points, which is incredible. So
yeah,
good on the Blackhawks for somehow making a season out of this, because they looked incredibly lost after 3 months. But yeah, that's.
Are the Avs lined up to have 2 top 5 picks now? Then
They could be. If the lottery falls the right way, like, that would be, incredible. That's bad if you're a Wild fan and you despise the Avalanche, but
Sure.
that would be really incredible. And also just obligatory laugh at the Ottawa Senators.
Man, how dumb was that Duchesne trade? They don't lottery protect, and they give away the first-round pick. They had their first-round pick this year. They could have given the Avs the 2018 first-round pick, and they didn't. Instead, they give them the 2019 first-round pick. Don't lottery protect it, and then proceed to fire sale their team. How bleeping stupid can you be?
Well, I don't think we have enough time to talk about the stupidity of the Ottawa Senators, but
Very fair. Yeah.
That's a whole podcast unto itself. So there you go. So that is your Central Intelligence, and then we will end our show as always with jerseys.
Here to start the third period. What team is this? It's not Team USA. Well, yes, it is. They've got on new uniforms. They're wearing the logo of the Duck. I've never seen this before.
All right, so the jersey topic du jour is we are ranking our top 10 current NHL jerseys, and we did this kind of on a cumulative basis where we each made a list of 1 through 10, and then Ben kind of added up the numbers, and we get our perspective. Our podcast has a 1 through 10 jersey ranking, so
Composite.
yeah, composite ranking. There you go. That's the word I'm looking for. Do
Yeah.
you have the list starting with number 10?
I do. First, I'll throw out 3 honorable mentions. I think it's kind of funny that you and I both make a list of top 10s, and there was only 3 teams that weren't on both of our top 10s. Or we each had 3 teams different. So not making the top 10, unfortunately, Tampa Bay's blue jerseys,
Yes.
which I think we can agree are very nice, probably just outside the top 10. The Wild white jerseys, which I think are very nice. I'm sure you probably are
Yep.
fairly high on them as well. And unfortunately made both of our lists, but was rather low, the Calgary Flames third jerseys, which are very nice, and they should be wearing them full time.
I think those were on my my list of 1 through 10, but like you said,
They
there
were
wasn't
on both
much
of our
difference.
lists, but they were 9 for you and 10 for me, so they just missed the overall list.
Ah, gotcha.
All right, so on to the actual list here. Number 10, I have the St. Louis Blues white jersey. I think that's a very good look for them. Very simple design. They kind of went away from all the red stuff that we kind of enjoyed from the 90s, even though it looked a little weird. And they luckily went away from all the Reebok Edge stuff very quickly. Even into the Reebok years, they cleaned up relatively quickly. So St. Louis Blues at number 10. Number 9 for the Gels in the goalie jersey ranking, the New York Islanders blue jersey. Something I didn't have on my list, but I do agree. It is a very nice jersey. I do like the classic look they brought back so many years ago. I really hope that they don't mess with it no matter where they move or what arena they're playing in, rather. But that is a very nice jersey. See, it looks 8 on our list. Something we both had in common, Detroit. Detroit's red jersey. I think that's a pretty good slam dunk.
Yep.
That logo is just beautiful. It's a very plain jersey, obviously. But that logo, that crest logo, is really something else. Something they've stuck with for a long time, and something that's very, it's fairly iconic at this point. I think it's safe to say.
Yeah.
Then on to number 7. I don't know what happened and how I missed this or what exactly my thought process was. I did not have the Capitals third jersey on my top 10 list. But,
Wow.
Luckily you did, and obviously you had it fairly high. So the Capitals third jersey comes in at number 7 for us. That'd be obviously the red jersey, the retro stylings from the 70s, 80s, early 90s that looks oh so good, and they should also switch to that full time. Let's see, number 6 is the Kachina Coyote, which we both had on our lists, obviously. Something that we both are a big fan of. Is it a little kitschy? Yeah. Is it a little bit dated? Yeah, but it still looks good. It still very much represents that area of America, and that's one of the things I like about it the best. What do you think so far, Giles? What do you think of the back end of the top 10?
I have no complaints here with what we have so far.
Yeah.
And if just to further on the Coyotes, if they make the playoffs over the Wild, that has to be their home uniform.
Oh, I hope they do that. That would be absolutely tremendous. Kind of like how the Penguins did that, right?
Yeah.
They wore the third jersey permanently, and the Wild did that as well. Yeah, they wore the greens.
Yeah.
In the playoffs. So that's not unprecedented, and that would be a lot of fun to see that exclusively in the playoffs.
No complaints on my end so far. But, I'm sure we'll have some contested, maybe here in the top 5.
Well, actually, so number 5 is a jersey I didn't have in my top 10, but Giles had very high, the Toronto blue jersey. It was one that I gave some thought to, and I do think it's a nice-looking jersey, but I just didn't have it in my top 10. I had other jerseys I liked more. I don't know if it's the butt in the maple leaf that turns me away, or what.
Nothing at all.
The stupid, sexy Flanders butt in the maple leaf.
And it's just a good look. Like, they've always kept it simple, and I don't know. I have a soft spot for the Maple Leafs jerseys, so there you go.
All right, number 4 was actually the top jersey on my list. Giles didn't have it super low, but had it in the middle of his list, the Chicago Blackhawks red jersey. I think this is also kind of an iconic logo, often imitated, never duplicated, but I think that's just a beautiful jersey. And you know, I will say, I don't blame you for putting a little bit deeper in your list now that I think about it. Those collars do come across a little wonky now. That's the one downside of the Adidas switch, is that the collar's kind of uglied up a little bit, and it's pretty noticeable with the Blackhawks. But I just think in general, even historically, if you look at the Blackhawks red jersey, very nice jersey.
It sounds like they're getting the collars edited next year, so those are going away.
All right, so on to number 3, a jersey that we both like very much, the Pittsburgh Penguins black jersey. After they made the switch away from Vegas Gold a couple of years ago, this was really a no-brainer. These jerseys are really fantastic. I own one myself. I own an old Lemieux version, complete with Stanley Cup patch, and it's just a really nice jersey. And they really, not to say they screwed up introducing these jerseys with Vegas Gold, because they were kind of getting out of a weird time in their franchise as far as the Robo Penguin and the diagonal letters. But it was a good move to go back to the athletic gold, as it's called, or whatever they want to call it, yellow, Pittsburgh yellow, I guess.
Yeah.
On to number 2, the New York Rangers white jerseys. Something that was on the top of Giles' list, as he's obviously told everyone for years. Very nice jersey. I think that it's very fitting that this jersey is this high. It's a good look. Looks slightly better than the Blues. I'm a fan of their Blues as well, but I think maybe it just gets a little bit muddled with the Blues, and it's a little more crisp and clear with the whites.
Yeah.
Kind of similar to the effect with the Wild. And finally, you kind of know what's coming. Number 1 jersey overall, actually number 2 on both of our lists. So it edged out the Rangers and Blackhawks, is the Montreal Canadiens red jersey. I think that you're probably going to get this with a lot of people, where the Canadiens are pretty solidly in their top 3 to 5. Maybe not everyone's favorite jersey, but a jersey that's earned so much respect, and a jersey that's really become a very iconic look into itself. I mean, they've really made that horizontal stripe across the middle their own in hockey. And sure, the Panthers tried to copy it, and sure, that Minnesota Wild team has tried to copy it, but that's really a Montreal thing. And I think because of that, that iconic jersey ends up as the number 1 jersey in the NHL currently, according to the Giles and the Goalie.
No complaints here.
Yeah, I think the list turned out pretty well. A lot of original 6 teams is maybe a little bit predictable, but I'm even more excited for next week when we do the top 10 worst jerseys in the league. I think we're gonna have more fun with that one.
Ooh, that'll be fun. So
yeah,
that can do it for the jersey segment. Check that out next week for our worst jerseys. But yeah, we will be wrapping this show up a little earlier than normal as we go out drinking for St. Patrick's Day. I don't know why it took me so long to get that up all in whatever, but yeah, so that can do it for us this week. Thanks to Ben for accommodating my drinking schedule this week. Thank you to, well, there are no more thank yous. That's it. Follow the Giles and the Goalie podcast on Twitter at JTG Wild Podcast. Follow Ben and I on Twitter at Ben Remington, at Giles Farrell. Find us at Zone Coverage MN on Twitter, where we try to write zonecoverage.com/wild. iTunes, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, all that fun stuff. You can find this otherwise fine production. If you do listen on iTunes, drop us a rating. It helps. So Facebook.com/GATG Wild Podcast as well if you like the Facebook. So yeah, that can wrap it up for this show this week. Happy drinking to those celebrating St. Patrick's Day, and we'll chat with you again next week.
Later.
It's not resiliency. You're making it sound like we're good. That's all. I'm done.